Welcome to the Drowsy Historian. Tonight, we're exploring what medieval weddings were really like. When we think of medieval weddings today, we often picture fairy tale ceremonies in grand castles with beautiful gowns and romantic declarations of love. The reality was far more complex and often far more practical than our modern imaginations suggest. Medieval marriage was not primarily about love or romance. It was about property, alliances, and survival. For peasants, marriage meant combining two households to better work the land and raise children who could help with labor. For nobles, marriage was a diplomatic tool, a way to forge alliances between families, consolidate power, and ensure the continuation of bloodlines. The medieval period spanned roughly from the 5th century to the 15th century, and wedding customs evolved considerably during this time. Geography also played a significant role. A wedding in England looked different from one in Italy or France, and a peasant wedding bore little resemblance to a noble ceremony. Yet certain elements remained consistent across time and place. The Church's growing influence over marriage, the importance of witnesses, the exchange of vows, and the public nature of the ceremony were common threads that tied medieval weddings together. This is not a story of romance in the modern sense, but it is a fascinating glimpse into how our ancestors approached one of life's most significant transitions. So settle in, relax, and let's journey back to discover what medieval weddings were really like. To understand medieval weddings, we must first understand what marriage meant in medieval society. Marriage was fundamentally an economic arrangement. It was a contract between two families, not simply between two individuals. This is not a story of romance in the modern sense, but it is a fascinating glimpse into how our ancestors approached one of life's most significant transitions. So settle in, relax, and let's journey back to discover what medieval weddings were really like. To understand medieval weddings, we must first understand what marriage meant in medieval society. Marriage was fundamentally an economic arrangement. It was a contract between two families, not simply between two individuals. For peasant families, marriage was about survival and prosperity. When two young people married, they combined their labor, their tools, their animals, and their land holdings. A husband and wife worked together to farm their strips of land in the common fields, to maintain their cottage, to raise livestock, and to produce children who would eventually contribute to the household economy. The timing of peasant marriages was often tied to economic readiness. A young man typically needed to inherit land from his father, or to have saved enough to lease land before he could support a wife. A young woman needed to bring some resources to the marriage as well, whether livestock, household goods, or skills like weaving or brewing. For the nobility, marriage served different but equally practical purposes. Noble marriages were diplomatic arrangements, carefully negotiated to advance family interests. A marriage might seal a peace treaty between warring families. It might bring new lands into a family's control. It might create an alliance against a common enemy. Young nobles often had little say in whom they would marry. Parents and guardians made these decisions based on political calculation. A girl might be betrothed as a young child to a man she had never met. The medieval church held complex and evolving views on marriage. In the early medieval period, the church had relatively little involvement in wedding ceremonies. Marriage was considered a secular matter, governed by custom and family arrangement. But beginning around the 9th century, the church began to assert greater control over marriage. Church officials argued that marriage was not merely a civil contract, but a sacred sacrament, instituted by God. This theological development had profound implications. If marriage was a sacrament, then it fell under the church's jurisdiction. Canon law, the legal system of the church, developed extensive rules about who could marry whom, under what circumstances, and according to what procedures. The church's teaching emphasized that marriage required the free consent of both parties. This was a radical idea in a society where arranged marriages were the norm. In theory, a young woman could refuse a marriage her parents had arranged. In practice, the church also insisted that marriage was indissoluble. Once validly married, a couple could not divorce and remarry. This, too, represented a significant change from earlier customs, when marriages could be ended relatively easily, at least among some groups. By the late medieval period, the church had largely succeeded in establishing its authority over marriage. Weddings took place in or near churches. Priests presided over ceremonies. Church courts adjudicated disputes about whether marriages were valid. Marriage had become, in the church's view, and increasingly in society's practice, the age at which people married in the medieval period varied considerably by social class, region, and century. The medieval church set minimum ages for marriage, 12 for girls and 14 for boys. These minimums were based on assumptions about when young people reached physical maturity and could consent to the marriage contract. However, actual marriage ages were often much higher, particularly among peasants and townspeople. Recent historical research examining parish records and other documents suggests that the average age of first marriage for English peasant women was around 20 to 22 years old. Men typically married slightly later. These relatively late marriage ages among the common people surprised earlier historians, who had assumed that medieval people married very young. But the economic realities of peasant life required waiting. A couple needed resources to establish their household before they could marry. Noble marriages followed different patterns. Among the aristocracy, marriages were often arranged when the parties were children. A noble girl might be formally betrothed at age 7 or 8. These child betrothals were contracts between families, not romantic unions. The children involved might not even meet until years later. Sometimes one party would die before the marriage was consummated, leading to complex negotiations about whether the survivor should inherit from the deceased's family. The church's requirement of consent created interesting tensions with arranged marriages. Canon law stated that both parties must freely consent to the marriage. No one could be forced into marriage against their will. If a person in practice, defining consent was complicated. How much pressure could parents legitimately apply? What constituted coercion versus appropriate parental guidance? Medieval church courts, dealt with numerous cases where one party claimed they had not truly consented to the marriage. Women had theoretically equal rights to consent or refuse marriage, a relatively progressive position for the medieval period. A young woman who absolutely refused a proposed marriage had the backing of church law, even if her parents insisted. Some women did successfully refuse marriages, though they often consent was supposed to be demonstrated clearly during the wedding ceremony itself. The couple exchanged vows, publicly stating their willingness to marry each other. Witnesses were present to testify that both parties seemed willing and spoke their vows clearly. Yet the gap between theory and practice remained wide. A young person, particularly a young woman, might feel tremendous pressure to consent to a marriage arranged by her family. The freedom to refuse was real. The process of finding a marriage partner varied dramatically across social classes in medieval society. For peasants and townspeople, there was generally more opportunity for young people to meet and choose their own spouses, though family approval remained important. In medieval villages, young people encountered each other at church services, at village festivals and celebrations, at markets, and while working in the fields. Harvest time brought young men and women together for long days of labor. Church ales, festivals celebrating saints' days, and seasonal celebrations like May Day. Young people also met at evening gatherings in the long winter months, where spinning, weaving, and other work was done communally. These gatherings provided a socially acceptable setting for unmarried young people to spend time together, though usually under the watchful eyes of older community members. Despite these opportunities for meeting, medieval peasant courtship was not entirely free from family control. Parents, particularly fathers, retained significant authority over their children's marriage choices. A young man would typically need his father's permission to marry. Similarly, a young woman needed her father's consent. A father had legal guardianship over his unmarried daughters, and his approval was required for a valid marriage. Families were concerned with finding suitable matches, partners who brought appropriate resources and had good reputations. Some young couples did form attachments and persuade their families to approve the match. The romantic ideal of couples choosing each other based on affection was not entirely absent from medieval peasant society. But practical considerations, land holdings, family reputation. Similarly, a young woman needed her father's consent. A father had legal guardianship over his unmarried daughters, and his approval was required for a valid marriage. Families were concerned with finding suitable matches, partners who brought appropriate resources and had good reputations. Some young couples did form attachments and persuade their families to approve the match. The romantic ideal of couples choosing each other based on affection was not entirely absent from medieval peasant society. But practical considerations, land holdings, family reputation for the nobility, courtship, in the sense of two young people freely choosing each other, was essentially non-existent. Noble marriages were arranged by parents, guardians, and sometimes by the king or overlord. The children who would eventually marry often had no input into the decision whatsoever. Noble fathers sought advantageous matches for their children. A daughter might be married to secure an alliance with a powerful family. A son might be married to an heiress, bringing her lands under his family's control. Military alliances, peace treaties, and inheritance. Young nobles might meet their future spouses for the first time at the betrothal ceremony, or even at the wedding itself. In some cases, they never met before the wedding day. Proxy marriages, where one party was represented by a stand-in during the ceremony, were not uncommon among the highest nobility. The elaborate system of courtly love that developed in the later medieval period provided a kind of outlet for romantic sentiment. Courtly love involved knights declaring devotion to noble ladies, composing poems and songs in their honor, and performing brave deeds to win their favor. But importantly, courtly love was typically extramarital. It was not about choosing a spouse, but about expressing refined. Once families had agreed on a marriage, the betrothal process began. Betrothal, or engagement, was a formal, legally binding contract between two families. It was not a casual promise, but a serious legal commitment. The betrothal ceremony was often quite elaborate, especially for wealthy families. Representatives of both families would meet to negotiate and finalize the terms of the marriage contract. The dowry was a central element of these negotiations. The bride's family provided a dowry, money, land, goods, or some combination that the bride would bring to the marriage. The size and composition of the dowry were carefully negotiated and recorded in the marriage contract. For noble families, dowries could be substantial. A large dowry made a young woman a more attractive marriage prospect. Families with several daughters sometimes struggled to provide adequate dowries for all of them. Some daughters might be sent to convents instead, where peasant dowries were more modest, but still significant for families of limited means. A peasant girl might bring livestock, household items like pots and linens, or perhaps a small amount of money saved over years. The expectation that families would provide dowries could delay marriage for poorer families. The groom's family also made financial commitments. The dower was property or money that the husband guaranteed to his wife to support her if he died before her. This ensured that a widow would not be left destitute. These financial arrangements were not romantic, but they were crucial. Marriage involved the transfer and merger of significant property and resources. Families insisted on clear agreements about these matters, recorded in writing and witnessed by respectable members of the community. At the betrothal ceremony itself, the couple would exchange vows of future marriage. These vows were made before witnesses and were legally binding. Breaking a betrothal could result in legal action. The person who broke the engagement, the church, distinguished between two types of betrothal vows. Vows de presenti were promises in the present tense. I take you as my wife, or I take you as my husband. These vows were considered immediately binding and actually constituted a valid marriage, even without a church ceremony. Vows de futuro were promises for the future. I will take you as my wife, or I will take you as my husband. These created a binding betrothal, but not an immediate marriage. This distinction created considerable confusion and led to numerous disputes. If a couple exchanged vows de praesenti privately, were they truly married? What if they later denied having done so? Church courts dealt with many cases of disputed marriages arising from private vow exchanges. Gifts were often exchanged at betrothals. The groom might give the bride a ring, though betrothal rings were different from wedding rings and worn on a different finger. Other gifts might include jewelry, clothing, or other valuable items. These gifts served as tokens of the agreement, and the period between betrothal and wedding could vary from very short to quite long. Among peasants, betrothals and weddings sometimes occurred within a few weeks or months. For nobles, particularly when children were betrothed, years might pass before the actual wedding took place. During the betrothal period, the couple was in a liminal state, not yet fully married, but bound together by a legal contract. They were expected to remain faithful to each other. Sexual relations during betrothal were technically sinful according to church teaching, though in practice, many betrothed couples did begin intimate relations. Once a couple was betrothed and a wedding date set, the church required that the banns be read. The banns were public announcements of the intended marriage, read aloud in church on 3 consecutive Sundays or holy days before the wedding. The purpose of reading the banns was to allow anyone with objections to the marriage to come forward. Someone might object because one of the parties was already married, or because the couple were too closely related, or for the parish priest would announce during the service, "I publish the banns of marriage between groom's name of parish and bride's name of parish. If any of you know cause or just impediment why these 2 persons should not be joined together in holy matrimony, you are to declare it. This is the first, or second, or third time of asking." These announcements were made in the parish or parishes where the couple lived. If the bride and groom lived in different parishes, the banns would be read in both churches. The couple and their families, the requirement to read banns served several important purposes. It ensured that marriages were public, not secret. It gave the community notice and opportunity to raise any legitimate objections. It also gave the couple time to reconsider if they were having doubts. Wealthier families could obtain a license to marry without the banns being read. This required applying to the bishop and paying a fee. The license certified that the bishop had investigated and found no impediment to the marriage. Obtaining a license allowed for most couples, however, the banns were read, and the community knew a wedding was approaching. This public knowledge meant that the wedding became a community event. Neighbors and friends made preparations to attend and celebrate. The bride and her family undertook numerous preparations in the weeks before the wedding. One of the most important was assembling the bride's trousseau. The clothing for a noble bride, the trousseau could be quite extensive. Fine dresses, shifts and underthings, cloaks and outer garments, jewelry, personal items like combs and mirrors, linens for the household, bedding, and other domestic goods. All of these required months or even years to prepare. Much of a noblewoman's trousseau was made by hand, either by the bride herself and women of her household, or by professional seamstresses and craftspeople hired for the purpose. Embroidery and decoration were important. Fine needlework demonstrated. Peasant brides had more modest trousseaux, but they too accumulated items for their new households. A chest containing linens, clothing, perhaps some pottery or kitchen implements. These represented years of preparation and saving. Mothers and daughters worked together to spin, weave, and sew in preparation for the daughter's eventual marriage. The wedding dress itself deserves special mention, as it was quite different from modern white wedding gowns. The white wedding dress is actually a relatively recent tradition, dating from the 19th century. Or noble brides, the wedding dress was often richly colored: red, blue, green, gold. These colors were expensive to produce, so a brightly colored dress displayed wealth. The dress would be made of fine fabrics like silk or velvet, trimmed with fur, decorated with embroidery and jewels. The bride's hair was styled specially for the wedding. An unmarried woman typically wore her hair long and loose, or in a simple braid, while married women covered their hair. At her wedding, a bride might wear her hair loose for the last time, often with a wreath of flowers. Peasant brides also wore their best dresses. The dress might be a cheerful color: russet, green, blue. The bride would certainly have new clothing made, if possible, though it would be practical clothing that could be worn again after the wedding for church or special occasions. Preparing the new household was another important task. If the couple would be setting up their own home rather than living with parents, the dwelling needed to be made ready. Furniture had to be acquired or built. Household items needed to be assembled. Among peasants, both families were often involved in these preparations. The groom's family might help prepare the house. The bride's family provided items for the household. Extended family members contributed what they could. A wedding was a family and community affair, not just a private matter between two individuals. The groom, too, had preparations to make, though they tended to be different in nature from the bride's activities. The groom's primary responsibility was ensuring that he could support a household. This meant having land to farm or a trade to practice, having a dwelling. For a young peasant man, this often meant waiting for his father to transfer land to him, or saving money to lease land from the local lord. He might need to build or repair a cottage. He would need to ensure he had the tools and equipment necessary for farming or his craft. A noble groom's preparations were more about legal and financial arrangements. The marriage contract had to be finalized, with all its complex provisions about dowries, dowers, and property rights. Legal documents had to be drawn up and witnesses secured. If the marriage involved a significant the groom would also acquire a ring for the ceremony. The wedding ring was an important symbol, and by the late medieval period, it was usually made of gold. The ring represented the union of the couple and the groom's commitment. It would be blessed by the priest and placed on the bride's finger during the ceremony. The groom had responsibilities for organizing the wedding feast as well. While both families typically contributed, the groom's family often bore primary responsibility for hosting. This meant procuring food and drink, which could be a substantial undertaking. For a noble wedding, the feast could be extraordinarily elaborate. Multiple courses of expensive foods, roasted meats, game birds, fish dishes, elaborate pies and pastries, imported spices and delicacies, wine and ale in abundance. Entertainment, including musicians, acrobats, and jesters. The cost could be staggering, sometimes more than a year's income. Even a modest peasant wedding involved expense. A whole village might contribute to the feast. Neighbors brought food and drink. The groom's family would slaughter animals, perhaps a pig or sheep if they could afford it. Ale was brewed especially for the occasion. Modest as it might seem by noble standards, a peasant wedding, the groom might also have new clothes made for the wedding. Like the bride, he would want to look his best. A noble groom would have elaborate garments made, perhaps a richly colored tunic, fine hose, a cloak trimmed with fur, leather boots. Every detail would display his wealth and status. A peasant groom would have a new shirt if possible, perhaps a new tunic in a good color. Clean, well-made clothing to honor the occasion and his bride. His clothing might be simpler than the nobles, but it still represented careful. Medieval weddings were decidedly not private affairs. The whole community was involved in wedding preparations and celebrations. This reflected the medieval understanding that marriage was not just about two individuals, but about two families joining, and about the community's stake in stable, properly formed households. Neighbors helped in practical ways. They might assist in preparing the couple's home. They contributed food and drink to the feast. They attended the ceremony and celebrations. Their presence as witnesses, the church too was involved in preparations. The priest ensured the banns were read properly. He might meet with the couple to instruct them on the duties of marriage. He prepared for the ceremony, ensuring that everything would be done properly according to church requirements. In some communities, there were traditional pre-wedding activities. Friends of the bride and groom might organize gatherings or small celebrations in the days before the wedding. These were opportunities to celebrate with the involvement of the community, underscored an important medieval principle. Marriage was a public matter, not a private one. A valid marriage required witnesses. The couple's vows needed to be made openly, not secretly. The community needed to acknowledge and accept the marriage. This public nature of marriage served practical purposes. It prevented secret marriages that might later be denied. It ensured that everyone knew who was married to whom, which was important for property rights, inheritance, and social order. It made clear that the couple was now a married household. The entire period of preparation, from the reading of the banns through all the practical and social preparations, built anticipation for the wedding day itself. When that day finally arrived, everything would be ready. The couple, their families, and their community would be prepared to witness and celebrate this important transition. On the morning of the wedding, the couple, their families, and the wedding guests would gather at the church. For much of the medieval period, the wedding ceremony actually began not inside the church, but at the church door. Literally, this location was significant. The church door was a threshold, a liminal space between the outside world and the sacred interior. It was also a public space. Anyone passing by could see and hear what was happening. This publicness was important, as it allowed the entire community to witness the vows. The priest would meet the couple at the church door. He would be wearing his vestments, carrying the ritual book that contained the marriage ceremony. The couple would stand before him, facing each other. Behind the priest would begin by asking if anyone knew any reason why these two people should not be married. This was the final opportunity for objections. If no one spoke up, the ceremony continued. The priest would then question the couple about their consent. He would ask the groom if he would take this woman to be his wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death parted them. The groom would answer. Then the priest would ask the bride the same question. Her clear consent, spoken aloud before witnesses, was required. She too would answer, "I will." This moment of public consent was the heart of the ceremony. It was what made the marriage valid. Next came the exchange of vows. The format of these vows evolved over the medieval period, but by the later Middle Ages, they followed a relatively standard form. The groom would take the bride's right hand in his right hand and repeat after the priest, "I take thee to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health." The word troth meant truth or faithfulness. To plight one's troth was to pledge one's faithful word. It was a solemn oath, witnessed by the community and by God. The bride would then speak her vows, taking the groom's hand. "I take thee to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to be bonny and buxom in bed and at board, till death." The phrase bonny and buxom meant obedient and cheerful. Medieval marriage vows for women often included explicit promises of obedience, reflecting the hierarchical nature of medieval marriage. The wife was expected to be subordinate to her husband, though the husband also had obligations to care for and protect his wife. After the vows, the ring ceremony took place. The groom would give the ring to the priest, who would bless it. Then the groom would place the ring on the bride's finger. The specific finger varied by region, but it was often the fourth finger of the left hand, the same finger we use today. Medieval people believed this finger, as he placed the ring, the groom would say, "With this ring I thee wed, and with my body I thee worship, and with all my worldly goods I thee endow." These words meant that he was joining his body to hers in physical union and committing his property and resources to her support. The giving of the ring was rich with symbolism. The ring's circular shape represented eternity and the unending nature of the marriage bond. Gold, the metal typically used for wedding rings, represented purity and value. The placing of the ring on the bride's finger. In some regions, coins were also involved in the church door ceremony. The groom might give the bride coins along with the ring, symbolizing his commitment to provide for her financially. These coins might be placed on the book the priest was holding, then given to the bride. Throughout this church door ceremony, the priest played a central role, but he was officiating at a contract between the couple. The marriage was created by the couple's exchange of vows, not by the priest's blessing. The couple married each other. The priest was there. Once the church door ceremony was complete, the party would move inside the church for the wedding mass. This was the religious component of the wedding, where the marriage would be blessed within the context of the church's central act of worship. The couple would process into the church, usually with the bride on the groom's right side. Medieval churches were arranged differently from modern ones. There were no pews. People stood during services. The couple would stand. The wedding mass followed the standard form of the medieval mass, with some special additions for the wedding. The priest would say prayers, asking for God's blessing on the couple. He would read biblical passages about marriage, including the story of the creation of Eve from Adam's rib, emphasizing that God had instituted marriage from the beginning. A particularly important moment came when the couple was blessed under a veil or cloth held over them. This cloth, called the care cloth or nuptial veil, was a symbol of the couple's new unity. In some traditions, only the bride was veiled. The priest would pray for the couple's fertility, asking God to grant them children. In an era of high infant mortality and economic need for children's labor, fertility was crucial. The couple needed heirs to inherit property and to support them in old age. Barrenness was considered a tragedy. The priest would also pray for the couple's faithfulness, for harmony in their marriage, and for their salvation. Marriage was understood as a means to avoid sin, particularly the sin of fornication. If the couple was wealthy enough, they might receive communion during the wedding mass. The sharing of the consecrated bread and wine, believed to be the body and blood of Christ, united them not only to each other, but to God and the church community. The Mass included hymns and psalms sung by the priest and sometimes by a choir. Even a small parish church would have some music for a wedding. The joyful sound at the conclusion of the Mass, the priest would give the couple a final blessing. He would make the sign of the cross over them and pronounce words invoking God's protection and favor upon their union. This blessing was seen as invoking divine grace to strengthen and sustain the marriage. The couple would then exit the church as a married pair. They had entered as two individuals. They left as one unit, bound together by vows, by law, and by sacred ritual. Their families and friends would congratulate them, and while the basic structure of the church door ceremony and wedding mass remained fairly consistent across social classes, there were notable differences in how elaborate and lengthy these ceremonies were. Noble weddings were grand affairs. The bride and groom wore their finest clothing, richly colored, expensive fabrics, jewelry, elaborate headwear. The bride might have attendants, other noble ladies who accompanied her. A noble wedding would have attracted a large crowd of guests. Other noble families, political allies, vassals, household knights and retainers, servants, all would be present. The church would be packed with people. Some guests had traveled for days to attend. The ceremony itself might be longer and more elaborate. Additional prayers might be said. The bishop, rather than a simple parish priest, might officiate, especially for the highest nobility. The peasant weddings were simpler but no less meaningful. The bride and groom wore their best clothes, but these were practical garments, not luxurious ones. The wedding party was smaller. Immediate family, close friends, neighbors from the village. The ceremony proceeded through the same basic elements: the church door vows, the ring exchange, the Mass, the final blessing. But it would be shorter, less formal in some ways. The local parish priest, who knew the couple and their families well, what peasant weddings lacked in grandeur, they made up for in community feeling. Everyone present knew the couple personally. They had watched them grow up, had worked alongside them in the fields, had worshipped with them every Sunday. The witnesses were not distant political allies, but friends and neighbors who would continue to be part of the couple's daily life. One notable difference involved the wedding feast. While both nobles and peasants held feasts, the timing sometimes differed. Noble feasts often began immediately after the church ceremony. Peasant feasts might be delayed until later in the day, or despite these differences, the essential elements remained constant. Every medieval wedding, whether noble or peasant, English or French, required public vows, witnessed consent, a ring, and the church's blessing. These consistent elements reflected the church's success in standardizing marriage practices across medieval Europe. The wedding feast was a crucial part of medieval wedding celebrations. For noble families, the feast was an opportunity to display wealth, generosity, and social status. It was also a chance to cement political alliances. A great noble wedding feast might last all day or even stretch across multiple days. The scale of hospitality was impressive. Hundreds of guests might be fed. The quantities of food and drink required were enormous. Preparations would have begun weeks or months in advance. The feast would be held in the great hall of a castle or manor house. Long tables would be set up, with the most important guests seated closest to the high table where the bride and groom sat. Seating arrangements were carefully planned. The meal itself consisted of many courses. Medieval noble feasts did not distinguish sharply between savory and sweet courses. Both might appear throughout the meal. The goal was abundance and variety, showing the host's ability to provide generously. First courses might include soups and pottages, thick stews of meat and vegetables. Then would come roasted meats, whole pigs, sides of beef, venison from the Lord's hunting lands, capons and geese, and other poultry. Game birds, like swans or peacocks, might be served. Sometimes with their fish dishes appeared as well, particularly if the wedding took place on a Friday or during Lent, when meat was forbidden. Elaborate fish pies, roasted fish, fish in rich sauces. Medieval cooks were skilled at preparing fish in diverse and appetizing ways. Pies were popular at feasts. Meat pies filled with spiced pork or beef. Elaborate pies with multiple ingredients. Sometimes pies served as entertainment. A large pie might be brought out, and when side dishes included vegetables prepared in various ways, though vegetables were less prominent than meats. Peas, beans, onions, leeks, cabbage, these were common. Salads of greens and herbs appeared, dressed with vinegar and oil. Bread was essential. White bread made from wheat flour was a luxury item, served to honored guests. Coarser brown bread made from barley or rye was more common. Bread served not only as food, but as plates. Thick slices of stale bread, called trenchers, were used. Sweets and delicacies concluded the feast. Sugared fruits and nuts for those who could afford expensive imported sugar. Custards and creams, fruit pies and tarts, spiced wine. These sweet courses were luxurious, demonstrating the host's wealth and connections to distant trade networks. Throughout the feast, servants circulated constantly. They brought dishes from the kitchen, refilled cups with wine and ale, cleared away finished courses. The smooth operation of service at a large feast. Wine flowed freely at noble feasts. Imported wines from France or the Rhine were prestigious. Ale and beer were also provided in abundance. Mead, made from fermented honey, was another option. The goal was to ensure no guest went thirsty. The atmosphere at a noble wedding feast was boisterous and joyful. Guests talked and laughed loudly. They called out toasts to the bride and groom. As the feast progressed, entertainment accompanied the feast. Musicians played throughout the meal. Perhaps a small ensemble of minstrels with lutes, harps, and other instruments. They played lively dance tunes and softer melodies to suit different parts of the feast. Jugglers, acrobats, and jesters might perform between courses. They told jokes, performed tricks, and generally added to the festive atmosphere. Dancing was a major part of the celebration. After the feast concluded, tables might be pushed aside and dancing would begin. Medieval noble dances ranged from stately processional dances to energetic leaping dances. The bride and groom would be expected to lead the dancing. Peasant wedding feasts were more modest than noble banquets, but were still significant celebrations. The entire village community might be invited. The feast was a chance to celebrate together, to wish the couple well, and to enjoy. Peasant feasts were usually held outdoors if weather permitted, or in the largest barn or building available. There was no great hall, so the community had to improvise. Trestle tables would be set up. Benches and stools provided seating. In good weather, everyone might simply sit on the ground. The food at peasant feasts was simpler than at noble feasts, but there was more of it than usual. A pig or sheep might be slaughtered and roasted. If the village was near the sea or a river, there might be fish. Chickens, geese, rabbits. Bread was central to the feast. Fresh bread was baked especially for the occasion. Pottage, the thick vegetable stew that was a staple of peasant diet, would be prepared in large quantities. Cheese, butter, eggs. These appeared on the feast tables. Beer and ale were essential. A wedding was one of the few occasions when peasants could drink as much as they wanted without worrying about the cost. Beer was relatively cheap to brew, and the community peasant wedding feasts were communal affairs in a way that noble feasts, despite their larger scale, were not. Everyone contributed something: food, drink, labor in cooking and serving. The feast was not provided by a wealthy host, but created collectively by the community. Entertainment at peasant feasts was simpler, but no less enthusiastic. There might be a local musician with a fiddle or pipe. People sang folk songs everyone knew. Dancing was vigorous and joyful. Circle dances, games, and contests might be part of the celebration. Young men might compete in wrestling or other tests of strength. Children ran and played. There was a spirit of general merriment and relaxation from the usual constraints of daily labor. Certain traditions appeared at both noble and peasant weddings, though the exact forms varied by region and time period. These customs, the bride's garter was a significant item. At some point during the celebrations, the groom would remove the bride's garter. Sometimes this happened fairly publicly, to much joking and laughter. The garter might be thrown to unmarried men who believed catching it would bring them luck in finding a wife. Throwing wheat or grain over the couple was a common tradition. This symbolized wishes for fertility and prosperity. The grain represented abundance and growth. Blessing the marriage bed was another custom, particularly among the wealthy. Before the couple retired for their wedding night, the bed would be blessed by a priest. This blessing was meant to sanctify the physical union and pray for children to be conceived. In some regions, special wedding cakes or breads were prepared. These might be shared among the guests or given to the couple. Breaking and sharing bread together symbolized the couple's new unity. Music and dancing continued late into the night. For peasants, this was a rare chance to celebrate without work obligations the next day. For nobles, the entertainment and dancing might continue until dawn. The wedding day was an exception to normal routines, a time set apart for celebration. Throughout the feast and celebration, the community witnessed and affirmed the couple's marriage. Every toast, every song, every dance was a way of celebrating and supporting the new union. The public, communal nature of the celebration. Among noble families, the wedding night involved a public ritual known as the bedding ceremony. This custom strikes modern people as extremely invasive and embarrassing, but in medieval culture, it served important purposes related to witnesses, consummation, and the legal validity of the marriage. As the wedding feast wound down, the time would come for the bride and groom to retire to the bedchamber. But they would not go alone or in privacy. Instead, a bride would be attended by female relatives and friends who would help her prepare for bed. They would help her remove her wedding garments and dress her in a nightgown or shift. Meanwhile, the groom was attended by male friends who helped him prepare similarly. Once both bride and groom were prepared for bed, they would be brought together in the bedchamber. The bed itself would have been blessed by a priest earlier. The couple would get into bed together, and then, remarkably to modern sensibilities, the priest might say additional prayers over the couple in bed. Guests would offer bawdy jokes and advice about the wedding night. There was much laughter and teasing. Eventually, the guests would leave and the couple would finally be alone. The purpose of this ritual was to provide witnesses that the couple had indeed gone to bed together. This was important because consummation was necessary for the marriage to be fully valid and indissoluble. The emphasis on witnesses reflected medieval concerns about legitimacy. In an era when property, titles, and inheritance rights were at stake, it was crucial to establish clearly that a marriage had been properly completed. Witnesses could later testify, if necessary, that the couple had indeed been put to bed together. For royal and very high noble marriages, the stakes were even higher. The legitimacy of children, potential heirs to thrones and vast estates, depended on the validity of the parents' marriage. The bedding ceremony. Uncomfortable peasants generally did not practice elaborate bedding ceremonies. Their wedding nights were more private, though the couple's lodging on the wedding night might still be common knowledge and subject to good-natured teasing. The community knew the couple would consummate their marriage, but there was less need for formal witnesses. The morning after the wedding was significant in several ways. For noble marriages, particularly, evidence of the bride's virginity was important. The bedsheet might be inspected for blood, proving the bride had been a virgin. This proof was especially crucial in royal marriages. The public interest in the bride's virginity reflected the double standard of medieval sexual morality. A bride was expected to be a virgin. A groom was not held to the same standard. A woman's virginity was seen as part of what she brought to the marriage, proof that any children she bore would be her husband's. The couple might receive visitors on the morning after the wedding. Well-wishers would come to congratulate them. The formal procession to greet the couple after their wedding night. For the first days and even weeks after the wedding, the couple was in a special status. They were newly married, and this was recognized by the community. They might be excused from certain work obligations. Friends and family might bring them gifts or invite them to meals. Gradually, the newlyweds would settle into normal married life. The bride would take up her duties as wife and manager of the household. The groom would return to his work, whether farming, craft work, or noble administration. But their status had fundamentally changed. They were no longer unmarried young people. For women, marriage brought both new burdens and new status. A married woman had more authority and responsibility than an unmarried girl. She managed the household, supervised servants if the family had them, and handled many economic functions. She would be addressed differently and treated with the respect due to a married woman. For men, marriage marked full adulthood. A married man was a householder, expected to support his family and represent them in the community. He took on responsibilities for his wife's behavior. The wedding night and the days immediately following marked the transition from betrothal to full marriage, from two individuals to one married couple. What began with the church door vows was now complete. The couple had exchanged promises, celebrated with their community, received the church's blessing, and consummated their union. They were, in every way that medieval society recognized, husband and wife. We've journeyed through the complete process of a medieval wedding, from the initial arrangements between families to the morning after the wedding night. We've seen how marriage was far more than a romantic union. It was an economic partnership, a political alliance. Medieval weddings were remarkably public affairs. From the reading of the banns in church, to the church door ceremony, to the communal feast, to the bedding ceremony, the community witnessed and participated in every stage. Privacy, as we understand it, was largely absent. Marriage was too important to society to be left to the couple alone. The church's influence shaped medieval weddings profoundly. What began as a secular contract gradually became a religious sacrament. The requirement of consent, the indissolubility of marriage, the church ceremony, the priest's blessing, all of the. Yet much about medieval weddings was practical rather than romantic. Financial arrangements, property transfers, labor needs, political alliances, these considerations drove many marriages. Love, if it came at all, often came after the wedding rather than before. The differences between noble and peasant weddings remind us that medieval society was highly stratified, but certain elements remained constant across classes. The public vows, the community's role as witness, the celebrate. Many medieval wedding traditions have survived in modified form to the present day. We still exchange rings and vows. We still have wedding feasts and celebrations. We still recognize marriage as a significant life transition worthy of ceremony and celebration. But we've lost the sense of marriage as primarily a community and economic institution. Modern weddings are more about the couple and less about the families and community. This shift reflects broader changes in how we, looking back at medieval weddings, we see a society that valued stability, community, and clearly defined roles over individual preference and romantic love. We see the church's efforts to regulate and sanctify a crucial social institution. We see families carefully negotiating alliances and transfers of property. We also see people finding ways to celebrate, to mark one of life's most important transitions with ritual and festivity. Despite the practical concerns, despite the arranged matches, despite the lack of privacy, medieval people recognized that weddings were special occasions, worthy of their best clothes, whether in a great cathedral or a humble village church, whether in a castle's great hall or on the village green. Medieval couples spoke their vows, exchanged their rings, and embarked on married life together. Their world was very different from ours, but the hope for happiness, the desire for children, the need for partnership, these human constants connected medieval couples across the centuries to all who came before and all who have come after. And with that, our exploration of medieval weddings comes to an end. Thank you for listening to the Drowsy Historian. I hope you found this journey into the past both informative and